On today's show, the NBA draft is about a month away. We get into some hypotheticals from the mailbag, plus all rookie teams and much more. And all of it's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1979 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday, and I want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to this podcast anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple, includes Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so please like this video as you're watching it, and of course, be sure to tell your friends, colleagues, family, and anybody in your life about this podcast. If you missed it, I did a two-part conversation with Glenn Willis earlier this week about Larry Nance and player capsule series. That was always fun to talk to Glenn, and that's the start of our annual summer series on the entire Hawks roster, player by player, and we'll have more of that coming up in short order. But on today's show, some mailbag questions, some news, everything in between as we kind of bridge the gap into Wednesday, and the draft is coming fast and furious. First, the big news of the day, if you want to call it that, was the NBA taking a strangely long break between award announcements. We finally got back to it today with the announcements of the all-rookie teams. Still waiting on MVP and all-NBA, all-defense across the board. The Hawks do have some interest in those, as you might imagine. All-NBA, Trae Young is at least a candidate. I would say not likely to happen, but certainly possible. And then Dyson Daniels is certainly going to be an all-defensive candidate. I would guess intelligently at this point in time, he's probably going to be on the first team of that, but we'll see how that happens when it happens. But long story short, Zaccharie Risacher was pretty much a lock, I would say, to be first-team all-rookie after he finished second in Rookie of the Year voting to Stephon Castle. And he ended up actually getting 99 out of a possible 100 votes for first team. Everyone was asking this. I don't know who the person is yet that did not vote him. The award voting will be revealed in kind of person-by-person detail later on this summer, but I don't really care that much. But I would say this. I'm not sure he look at this class on the whole with 5 rookies ahead of Zaccharie Risacher. I'm not screaming about this. It is what it is. It's a bad vote. It happens. But Risacher obviously deserving. He was certainly right up there with Rookie of the Year pursuits, etc. Also, he's the 10th Hawk now in the history of the franchise to earn a first-team all-rookie selection. This is a little bit of propaganda, but I found this out in looking it up. 4 of the previous 9 Hawks that made first-team all-rookie are actually already in the Hall of Fame, which is kind of crazy. And then 2 more of them could be. Trae Young and Al Horford both have, I would say, paths to the Hall of Fame. So it could be that 6 of the 10 guys that have ever done this for the Hawks would be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying Risacher is going to get there. Obviously, he probably won't if you do the math on that. But he also is only the 3rd Hawk to be first-team all-rookie since 1992. And the other 2 guys that did that were Al Horford and Trae Young. So pretty select company there. Obviously not the best draft class in the world. But Risacher had a very good season and a nice little honor to cap that off for the young guy. From here, the rest of the show will be mailbag questions. The first one is kind of newsy, which is why it's going up front. And it comes from Matt B., who says, is there any word on internal decision deadline for the front office? The short version is, Matt, I'd love to know the answer to that. I will say this. I've been hearing the entire time that the Hawks are not in a massive hurry to hire someone in the front office. If you missed it at the end of last week, a Friday night episode, actually, I did a long segment on this podcast on the latest reporting from Jake Fisher that the Hawks may not hire anybody at all, actually, and they might just roll with Ansi Saleh, currently the general manager of the Hawks. That's been on the table since the beginning, which I did say a month ago now, but it does kind of speak to maybe a reason why they're not going to go terribly quickly, because dating back to when they fired Landry Fields in late April, I thought the combine might have been like a soft deadline to make a hire, and obviously that did not happen. The combine happened last week, no hire in place, because if you don't know this, the combine and the lottery is kind of like a soft convention around the league. Like all the front offices are there. They're all talking about players and draft stuff. Media's all there. It's kind of buzzy. Not quite summer league level, but certainly kind of somewhat similar to that. And not having your number one person be there is kind of interesting. Not a bad thing. And because they didn't hire anybody by then, I think Ansi is obviously leading the team right now, basketball operations-wise. And it seems like Tony Ressler and company are comfortable with that, which I think is fine, honestly. They don't have to hurry. It's definitely been possible the entire way that Ansi might be just the guy by the end of this process. It's been super quiet, actually, since the little wave of reporting last week. There was a little bit of buzz about Masai Ujiri, I touched on the podcast, and then there were some agent possibilities. But the most recent reporting on this that actually was kind of new was Friday about the potential of not hiring anybody. So that's been 4 or 5 days now. Nothing new on that front. It could be any day. It could be a little while longer. We just don't know. I don't think there's a firm deadline, obviously. I guess if you want to say that the draft itself could be a deadline, that's at least possible to me. That makes sense. I feel like if you get like within like a week or 10 days of the draft and haven't hired anybody, you're kind of just going with Ansi running the draft process, even if you don't do that officially. I don't know. Someone actually asked me this week if the Hawks would just like make an announcement or they would just kind of quietly not do anything if they were going to keep Ansi in the top job. I don't know the answer to that, but I think traditionally you would have someone in the front office talk to the media before the draft. Certainly at the very latest on the night of the draft, someone will have to talk, and we'll see who that person is, if it's Ansi or not. But anyway, long story short, it's the NBA. Free agency begins a week after the draft, and the blitz is on from about mid-June until mid-July. But in the meantime, it is quiet. That could change literally tonight or literally tomorrow. So we just don't know. But as far as a deadline or a timeline, I don't know. And I've been asking, and people aren't terribly sure how much the Hawks are like clamoring to do something here. And again, the only person that's been by name new tied to the job in the last couple of weeks is Masai Ujiri, who's currently under contract with Toronto. So it's just this waiting game, and we'll kind of see what Wrestler and company choose to do in the future. All right. The rest of the show is going to be some mailbag questions on draft-related topics. Later in the week, by the way, I have a episode that I already recorded. It's going to be a fun conversation. It's going to be 2 parts on the draft with Will Rucker, who's fantastic. Talks about some trade-up candidates. It's been a very popular thing. And at the end of this podcast, talk about my own thoughts on trading up in this class to answer a question. And one more PSA here before we get to a break. If you want to send in questions, I don't always do like mailbag calls. The mailbag is always open. So if you want to send in questions anytime, you can do so all kinds of ways. On Twitter/X, the show is at Locked On Hawks. I'm at BT Rowland. I am on Blue Sky as well at BT Rowland. Send questions there. We also have an email address. It's lockedonhawks@gmail.com. That's lockedonhawks@gmail.com. And if you're also a Patreon follower of mine at patreon.com/BT Rowland, I'll take questions there as well and put it all together. And here we go with a bunch of mailbag questions. Already answered one on this podcast from Matt. More to come in a second. First, though, from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by SKIMS. When I found out that SKIMS is actually making underwear for men, I was intrigued by that. I've heard a lot about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try for myself. And let me tell you, it's definitely living up to the hype. Many people have issues with their underwear, from fit to comfort or just finding the right style for what they want, but SKIMS changes all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style to boot. For example, the stretch 5-inch boxer briefs have rave reviews. They're perfect for an active lifestyle. They move with you, never lose their shape, and stay in place all day long. Whether you're working out or running errands or anything in between, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear available anywhere for you. Plus, lightweight material feels amazing in any situation. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/lockedonnba and at SKIMS stores. Also, let them know that we sent you to them. After you place an order, select podcast in a survey and select our show in the menu that drops down and follows that. One more time, the place to go is skims.com/lockedonnba. All right, a question about the draft, but kind of not about this draft necessarily. A little bit of it is, and we'll get to that right now. It's from Mitchell, and Mitchell says, if Zaccharie Risacher was in the 2025 draft, where would he have been projected? So this question came in a few days ago. I figured it'd be a good time to kind of answer it now alongside his all-rookie selection. Obviously finished number 2 in Rookie of the Year voting, had a very good year, all that said. With any question like this, it's impossible to be like universal with your answer because it's still eye of the beholder. Obviously, every draft is just the way that it goes. It goes one way. But if a team changed here or an evaluator changed here, even when there is a draft that's happened, there isn't still a consensus. It's just the way that actually just went one time. So I say all that because people didn't have him number 1 in last year in the class. Some people did, but not everybody. There was a mixed bag there. It was a flat top of the draft a year ago. And people, even this year, have differing ideas about this draft. I think Cooper Flagg is like a consensus number 1. Dylan Harper probably considers number 2, close to everybody. That's where I have him, for instance. But there's some more splits and always interesting tier breaks, etc. I'd also say there are kind of 2 questions in here from Mitchell while only asking one. Number 1 of those questions is, where would he go if you're thinking about him as a pre-draft prospect only? So basically, take the 1 year ago Risacher and put him in this class right now. That's one pathway. Number 2 is, where would he go if you're banking in his rookie season? So if we already saw him play for a year and now we know who he is at age 20, now put that player in the draft, that could be a different conversation. So that's I'll kind of do both a little bit here. I think they are different to some degree. Not for everybody always, but personally, I am a little bit higher on Risacher now than I was a year ago. Not my entire evaluation has changed or anything like that, but I think I just have more certainty that he's going to be good than I did a year ago. And generally speaking, I think that I am someone who would value like the NBA sample more than most would. That's just the way it is. But anyway, the first thing is, where he goes as a pre-draft prospect, if just placed in this draft. So going back to a year ago, try to put that out. It's always hard to do that when you've seen a guy play, but just go back to, I have notes on the guys, for example, and I'll kind of reflect on some of that stuff now. For me, he'd clearly be behind Flagg and Harper, like clearly behind those 2 guys for me as a pre-draft prospect. I would also say he'd be probably in the same tier with VJ Edgecombe, Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson, if you want to throw in Derek Queen, Kamen Malawak, that kind of group. And again, of course, some of this has to do with what you think of Risacher. There was a split last year. I thought he was in the first tier of guys last year, but I also said, and I still believe now, that there was not really a true traditional number one overall pick talent in last year's draft. And I stand by that now. So this year, Cooper Flagg is that. You can debate about how good Cooper Flagg is, whether he's better than your Anthony Davises or whatever, Zion's, but he is a tier 1, true number 1 pick kind of prospect. While Dylan Harper is not Cooper Flagg, I do think he's a better pre-draft prospect than anyone last year was. That's my opinion. So that's 2 guys ahead of Risacher for sure. But again, I think basically Risacher, Alex Sarr, maybe another guy or 2 would still be in that same general range tier with Edgecombe, Bailey, etc. this year. So that's a pretty good lofty landing spot. Not number 1 overall, but pretty high up there. The second question is where I'd have Risacher if we knew his rookie season already happened. We got to watch it all year long, and it's a little bit different. Again, for me, if you took Risacher now after a year and put him in this draft, I would have him 3rd and kind of in his own mini tier. And what I'm saying about that is that's still the same placement, but I would have him a little bit ahead of Edgecombe, Bailey, Queen, Johnson. Pick your guys there. And again, it comes back to what I value the certainty aspect of things. And the fact that I've now seen Risacher play for a year, and I am confident that he's going to be good in the NBA. And there's no substitute for NBA experience and like being able to see a guy play in that setting against pros and real pros, top tier guys, high leverage games, all that stuff. Now, that gets lost sometimes, in my opinion, in trying to project guys. There is almost always, in my opinion, more uncertainty about prospects than people want to admit. And I mean that with fans. I mean that with analysts even. Like, no one is perfect on this stuff, and there's just a lot less certainty, and that's just been baked in. I've done lots of draft studies in the past of like draft slots, what they actually net out. I blow everyone's mind every year, it seems like, by saying that the number 2 overall pick is not – the baseline number 2 is not as high as anyone thinks that it is. In fact, the only slot historically in the NBA draft in which a reasonable projection is a star-level player is number 1 overall. And I'm not just saying – that is proven to be the case over 50 years of data, 60 years of data, however you want to say that. Number 2 overall, if you get a good player at number 2 overall, a good player, you've done pretty well historically. I always say this, Marvin Williams actually was not a terrible number two overall pick. And that sounds crazy. Obviously, they should have taken Chris Paul, all those things. But he played in the league 15 years. Like, it's an interesting calculation. Basically, every pick outside of number 1, the baseline is lower than you think it is, generally speaking. Anyway, it's kind of a sidetrack, but because of that uncertainty, seeing Risacher play well in an NBA setting on a competitive team over a full season gives me more confidence in him, and that would give me a little bit more separation against everybody else in this class that is not Flag and not Harper. I believe it's reasonable if you're really on Risacher to have him even in maybe the closer to the tier with Harper right now after a year. If you include the first year of his play, not pre-draft, post-draft. If you're lower on Harper, that would be reasonable. If you're higher on Risacher, same thing. But to answer the question in that lens, pre-draft, I'd have Risacher in that 3 to 8 range in this draft. Now that we know, he would be 3 for sure. That's kind of where I would say, as far as like where I break it down. Again, even for sure is like too strong. I use that term probably too loosely, but that's just the nature of the beast in the NBA draft. And there's some questions. Hopefully that makes sense. I do like Zach a lot. He does a lot of things well that will help you win long term. I'm not still sure like what the actual ceiling is on Risacher. He's not going to be like a 30-point scorer in the league, I don't think. But a 6'9" forward who can defend and shoot and cut and run and like do all the little things is very valuable. And I'll talk about this a little bit later on in the podcast on the last mailbag question that I'm going to answer. I am probably not as excited about that like 3 to 8 group in this class as some are. And that's fine. I mean, I think it's just because I don't see anyone other than the top 2 as like clearly up there in this draft. Somebody's going to be good, I'm sure. That's usually how it goes. But part of this and where I'd land with Risacher is that I just am a little bit lower on the 3rd tier, basically, of this group. Anyway, we'll have more to come on that topic, including a trade-up hypothetical in this year's draft. It's coming up in just one moment. Today's show is brought to you by CarGurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting and not exhausting. But between the confusing prices and the hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming sometimes. That's why I love using CarGurus. They'll be covering all the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. They have over 4 million listings, and CarGurus is more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the U.S. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data that you need to make the right choice without second-guessing yourself. If you need a deal that you can trust, CarGurus makes it easy to shop and compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. And the best feature might be the price drop alerts. You know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget. Plus, the in-depth vehicle details give you peace of mind before stepping onto any lot. It is no wonder the similar web estimated traffic data shows CarGurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your next car today with CarGurus at CarGurus.com. Go to CarGurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. And one more time, the place to go is CarGurus, CarGurus.com. One more time, it's CarGurus.com. All right, and one more question on today's podcast, at least one more. Might get to 2, we'll see. My pal Glenn Willis, who was on the show earlier this week to discuss Larry Nance Jr. in that player capsule, he threw in a hypothetical about trading 13 and 22 to move up in the draft and basically asked Twitter which prospects would be worth that investment. I replied 0. And a listener named Callum sent me a question right after that with the link to the exchange. It basically said a question of, did you really mean 0? So that's the question I'm going to answer right now. First, I teased this already, but I already talked to Will Rucker, and I'll have that podcast up later on this week. It's entirely focused on kind of the trade-up range and all the prospects in that range. And I may not cover those guys a ton more in the next month because they're not really in Atlanta's range without a trade-up. But on that discussion, we talked about Derek Queen, Kevin Malawak, Con Kneppel, Trey Johnson, Ace Bailey, BJ Edgecombe. Like all those guys, which that's an entire 2-part episode. It's coming up later on this week, so I won't spoil all that stuff. But it is a very popular topic. I get that. It's coming up later on this week. But back to the question. I don't literally mean 0 because I think this is very obvious. But if you could somehow trade for Cooper Flag, obviously you would do that. Dylan Harper is not the cleanest fit on the Hawks roster, given that I believe he's an on-ball point guard. But if it was a reasonable trade-up package, then sure, I wouldn't go crazy for him. But those guys are kind of like to the side here. Just put that out there to be very, very clear. My answer, though, to Glenn's question was somewhat genuine if you go off of the real-world scenarios. Because something short of truly insane, like Flag or Harper being available, trading 13 and 20, this is the hypothetical is 13 and 22. Nothing else, just those 2 picks for one of these players. That's the hypothetical Glenn put out there. It won't get you Flag. That won't get you Harper, I don't believe. And that means that my answer is probably no one. Now, there are people that reply to that tweet who disagreed, and I totally understand that. I'm not like firm and yelling about this. I am not saying this is that I'm right and everybody's wrong. There are players that I think would be reasonable to trade up for. Reasonable is different than like I want to do it, but there are guys that I do think are like good enough prospects to justify this kind of trade up. I will say that. But it does kind of lay out that I am not in a vacuum on the trade up train in this draft. Again, in a vacuum. There is always nuance and every situation is different. But if you said, just broadly speaking, Brad, do you want to trade up? My answer would be no. That's kind of where we would be. Now, there are different stratosphere guys. The only guys in this class that I think are a different stratosphere than the 13th pick are Flag and Harper. I have a big break after that as far as how I'm tiering these guys. It's a pretty decent size fall from Harper to the next guys. And for me, I'm not saying there isn't a difference because there is a difference. There is a difference. But the gap between the 3rd pick and 13th pick in this draft is not absolutely massive in my view. Like, there is a difference between Ace Bailey and a guy you can get at 13, or Con Kneppel, or whoever you want to say your favorite player is, Derek Queen. There's a difference, but it's not a massive 2 first-round pick level drop-off. I do believe some guys in my top 5 or 6 are a little bit higher for me than others, but complicating the factor here is that guys I like a lot are not like perfectly fit guys with the Hawks, which means even less of an incentive for me to try to trade up. For example, I'll only do 1 or 2 of these, but VJ Edgecombe, I like a lot, like 3 or 4 in this draft from Baylor, but he's also 6'4" without shoes. He's basically a shooting guard size. He's a great athlete, to be fair, but like one of his measurement comps is Drew Holiday, like just physically. And his calling card right now is defensive potential and like just pure athleticism, basically. That's very real. He'd overlap a little with Dyson, I think. Like, he's more of a secondary offensive player. He could shoot better than Dyson as a prospect, but I wouldn't be like itching to trade 2 first-round picks for VJ as the Hawks right now, even if I like him quite a bit. Like, I get why you might do that. I am also quite confident that 13 and 22 would not get you to like 5 to draft VJ Edgecombe, but that's kind of the example of what I'm saying. Like, I think he's going to go that high, and if he does, I don't think you have the juice or the desire to trade what you would need to trade to go get him. That's my example. I'll say some stuff for later on this week with Will, but like Trey Johnson's kind of similar in some respects. Now, different player, but Johnson's number one appeal is his shooting. Like, he's a really, really good shooting prospect. Definitely a lottery talent. But also, he's a shooting guard size player with like ancillary skills that I don't love. So, like, am I going to trade 2+ first rounders for a shooting guard who really his primary thing is shooting? On this roster, I don't think I'm going to do that in a vacuum. Ace Bailey is another example. Like, I'm a little bit lower on Ace Bailey than some people are. If you believe that he's like the 3rd guy for sure in this draft, then like, yeah, trade up for him if you want to. But like, I am not quite on that level. Like, I have him in the same kind of tier as Edgecombe, as Kneppel, as whoever, Queen. And look, a lot of questions about Malawak and Queen, obviously, about the trade-off options. Those guys are centers, different kinds of players. Both of them are top 10 guys for me. Full stop. I have Malawak and Queen, both of my top 10 in this draft. Now, with that said, do I believe they are that much better than the 13th pick options will be? Like Thomas Sorber, for example, as one example. Like, I do have Malawak and Queen higher than Sorber, but not by enough to me to justify trading 2 picks. Especially on a team, and look, a Kongwu exists, and we'll get to that in a second. But my overall philosophy, again, which I'll go back to now quickly to kind of illustrate this answer, is that drafting is not an exact science. It's just not. People are a little bit too confident about their evaluations. And because of that, I tend to like multiple swings if you can do it. Like, I'll probably get to this question specifically later on in the cycle. Someone asked me today, like, would you trade if you could get a like first round pick kind of level asset to go from 13 to like 16, go down, would you do it? And my answer was yes, like instantly. For a first round pick, 3 spots in this draft, definitely I would. And people that may not be popular, trading down is rarely popular, but it usually is, in my opinion, the right decision. I also don't believe that everyone misses, including me. I'm wrong a lot about this stuff. Everyone's going to be. Even people that you trust a lot, people that I think are great at this, are going to miss, naturally. I would not want to move 2 picks up to draft a center in this draft, just resource allocation-wise. Part of that is that I think Okongwu's good, and he might be playing 28 to 32 minutes a game at center for you for a while. And Malawak is a better natural fit in some ways because he does different things than Okongwu. Like he's that mythical true 7-footer that everybody seems to want. But I'm not like super convinced on him enough to do this. And also, like, you might be trading up for a guy that's a part-time player at center. If you believe in Okongwu, like, and I'm not sure if they do 100% because we don't know who's going to make the decision, but center's a tricky spot. Like if you have 2, you have to have 2 guys, but do you want to use 2 first-round picks to get another center? I don't know. In theory, Queen is really skilled and really talented offensively to the point where like he could be a real offensive hub in the NBA. Like I believe that actually, but I think he's a center defensively, but a limited one defensively. And I wouldn't be in love. I'm not saying you can't do it. I wouldn't be in love with Okongwu and Queen together because you are, those guys playing together actually on the court would be kind of interesting. But you still have Jalen. And I think you want to have another guy. If you do that, you could do it, but maybe you have to have a third center that has more size potentially. And this is only one factor, but look, I'll say this. For Hawks fans that don't love the idea of Okongwu's defense, number one, I'm higher on his defense than probably people are. He is a much better defensive player / prospect in my view than Queen. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. Now, Queen's offensive upside is higher, to be fair. And look, I saw a mock draft today on Tuesday where Queen fell to 13. If Queen falls to 13, you got to consider taking him. I'm not saying you can't take him. That'd be a really good value. I'm totally fine with that. I don't want to trade up, but if you can, maybe if you have to trade up with a future second round pick or something like that, sure. But I don't want to trade up with a first round pick to do it. That's kind of my dividing line. So I'll stop going player by player, obviously at this point in time. And again, we'll get into a lot of these guys on the podcast later this week about guys projected from 3 to 10, basically. And look, my answer to Glenn's question was kind of tongue-in-cheek because there are some guys that I might trade up for, or at least consider trading up for. I wouldn't do it, probably, but I get it. Like, I'll just say this out loud. If you can trade 13 and 22 for Edgecombe or Bailey, like, I do get it. I probably wouldn't be as high on some, but I understand it. I'm just generally more averse to trading up. If we're being 100% honest, that's what this is. Both in this draft, and I would say most drafts overall, I don't love it. Like the most recent example of this that the Hawks dealt with is DeAndre Hunter. And look, put your feelings about DeAndre Hunter to the side right now. No longer a Hawk. It's been 6 years. I had Hunter as a top 5 pick in the 2019 draft. Top 5 guy in that class. I hated the trade the Hawks made. And I liked Hunter as a prospect. And people got mad at me. It's hard to explain. Nuances not always fall on the most loving ears. But people couldn't figure out why I liked Hunter as a top 5 pick, but also hated the trade. And it's because the Hawks overpaid in the trade. And they used a lot of different swings on one transaction. And it was risky. And it didn't really work. Hunter became a good NBA player, but for what they paid, he kind of had to be awesome, and he wasn't. So that's one example in the last 5-6 years. But it'd be similar to that, honestly. Like you'd be paying a lot to get up to that top 5, 6, 7 range to get some of these guys. And look, you better be right. If you hit it, everyone loves it. To use a football example, the Falcons traded the world for Julio Jones a long time ago, and guess what? He became a Hall of Fame level player. And because of that, no one cared. But if you miss, or if a guy's just pretty good instead of great, then you're in trouble. So there's risk, reward. I get all that. There's no Julio Jones, I don't think, at 3, 4, 5, 6 in this draft. But I am generally going to be lower on trading up than others might be. I definitely also know that it's part of the fun to dream about certain guys that are not going to fall to you and think about this and diagram lineups with these guys in the lineup. I get all that. It is part of the fun. I'm not writing on parades. I promise you. It's my job to cover the team and give my opinion. I am not going to love probably your trade-up scenario, but I also do understand it. There are some guys I would just hate it for, but some guys I wouldn't. So there's always nuance here. It is part of the fun and the debate, but especially when you have 2 picks, it even adds to it. So I will stop rambling now and just say a little bit lower under trade-up stuff. But hey, as an appetizer for later on this week, I will be talking to Will Rucker about Con Kneppel, Trey Johnson, BJ Edgecombe, Ace Bailey, Common Malawak, Derek Queen, etc. So please stay tuned for that. And look, we have a lot more draft stuff to do. 6 weeks, 5 weeks, or something like that from the draft, a little bit over a month. It's a long time, but also not a long time. It's going to come fast and furious, so please stay tuned all throughout the summer and beyond. By the way, if you're just finding the podcast now, we are a 12-month a year, 52-week a year operation on this pod, so please subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, etc. Also, follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky if you want to at BT Rowland. And my non-podcast work can be found at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your evening on this Tuesday into Wednesday, and we'll see you all next time.